Alright, where is this thing? No. Yep. Your fingers? Those. One of these. Go. Flowers. Dimension. Just keep building things. One of these? Oh boy. Ah, there you are. Hi everyone, welcome back to A Few Bricks Short. We're always a few bricks short of a complete LEGO collection. Now, I've been away for a little bit, and as I mentioned in a few previous videos, my family and I were moving to a new house, so we did that. About a week before that, I had nose surgery, so we've been setting up major parts of the house, like all the lights down here, those are brand new. There were a few just bulbs down here before, but put in some new ones. So with all that, working in general, having two kids, it's hard to find the time and energy to do all this. It's currently after 11:30 on a Friday night. I planned to do this on Monday. That went well. And as you saw, we haven't done a ton with our LEGO collection yet. It's all still in boxes and most of them made it. My extra parts collection drawers kind of got dumped at one point, so I had to reorganize all of those. Still have a little bit to do on that. One of the totes I had some sets packed in nicely, got knocked over by the movers somehow before it even made it out of the old house. So I'll have to fix that at some point. We're eventually going to set up a nice area down here for displays and a LEGO city, but we just haven't gotten there yet. That hasn't stopped us, of course, from buying and building new sets and building some stuff from our backlog, even though we have nowhere to put them at the moment. I still don't have a nicer camera, but I do have better lights, so progress. For other plans, I'd like to finish my house mock I started. I didn't get as much done with that before we moved as I would have liked, but I think I laid out the upstairs pretty well, and hopefully I'll work on the next video in that series very soon also. My son's LEGO part collection could use some reorganizing, so that could be an interesting video. And I would like to keep doing reviews. I have a bunch of things that we already have that I'd like to talk about, and I'm excited about some new things that are coming out, like the new Dreams theme. That would be fun. That's coming out August 1st, and hopefully I'll pick up a set or two on or around the 1st, most likely the weekend, because the 1st is a Tuesday. So lots on my mind, and hopefully I can keep making room on my plate. But for today, I wanted to talk about set 76016, Spider Helicopter Rescue. This is a retired 7-14 set in the Marvel Superheroes theme. It has 299 pieces, 4 minifigures, and 8 stickers. This retailed for $44.99 in 2014. So this set was actually under the Ultimate Spider-Man sub-theme of the Marvel Superheroes theme. This sub-theme was based on a show of the same name. The show ran for 4 seasons from 2012 until 2017. Interestingly, the sub-theme was only around from 2012 until 2015 and had a total of 10 sets. I watched the show a bit when the first few seasons were on Netflix in 2013 or 14. I remember liking it, so I'm rewatching it now, and honestly, it's actually like my least favorite of the Spider-Man cartoons, now that I've been able to also watch all the ones that came before it. But Still a fun show. I was able to purchase this set on Bricklink, new and sealed, for $40 in November of 2022. I was mostly interested in the minifigures, to be honest. Some of these figures, like Mary Jane herself, was being sold at $46 at the cheapest in the US when I was looking into this. The box was listed with some damage, so that's why the price actually ended up being lower than the original retail. I'm not one to keep the boxes, so if it's not super detrimental, it doesn't bother me. It was basically dinged up a bit and had a few rips in it. Nothing too bad. The instructions were a little beat up, but that's okay. So the set includes Spider-Man, Power Man, Mary Jane, Green Goblin and his glider, and the Spider Helicopter. I actually have bought one of these Spider-Man figures previously for a few bucks. I'm trying to collect as many different Spider-Man figures as I can, make my own Spider-Verse. This one's actually been in 14 total sets. The torso print is pretty great, pretty classic looking, and goes well with the head print with the big eyes for his mask. He does lack any leg or arm printing, which is fine. Oddly, he came in 2 sets with the same torso and head prints, but with dual molded blue and red legs, which is the figure I bought previously, and another set with red hips. So the torso and head prints have actually been used 17 times overall. Power Man is a pretty neat figure. I think the torso print fits his show costume pretty well. He could have used some dual molded black and yellow legs to give him his boots, but that's okay. The one thing he does need is some hair. LEGO seems to just make short-haired characters bald pretty often, even today. This was something I've seen mentioned with the Blade figure in the Daily Bugle. I know this piece wasn't around at the time, but I think the new Sam Wilson Captain America hairpiece could have been used here to give Power Man his short-haired look. No! Don't you hit concretely. This show tried to do something a bit different by giving Spider-Man a team right in the beginning of the show. So Spider-Man, Power Man, White Tiger, Nova, and Iron Fist all ran around together as a unit, stopping bad guys and saving the day and stuff, at least for the first 2 seasons. They would also do an odd thing quite often where they wouldn't let you forget this is a Spider-Man show and he's the main character. They would somehow manage to subdue all 4 of the side heroes, and then it would just be Spider-Man on his own to save the day. You'd think for Power Man specifically, this would be kind of hard to do, but they did it a lot.
Did you forget my skin's unbreakable? There's no one better prepared to fight this lizard outbreak than me.
Power Man as a minifigure doesn't go for too much, even though he's exclusive to the set. My theory is that he looks like a kid version of Power Man and belongs in this cartoon and doesn't really transcend that. In contrast, if you look at the Nova and Iron Man figures from this same sub-theme, they could belong in any story that you would have them in, and that is reflected in their aftermarket price, which is why I don't have them yet. White Tiger, I assume, is just not as popular of a character, which is reflected in her aftermarket price, and why I do have her. As much as they sideline these characters very often in the show, it was still one of the more interesting things they did from the start, so I would like to have this full Spidey team in my collection at some point. Next is Mary Jane. She comes with this cool Spider-Fan tank top, which I think is the more noticeable thing about this figure. Interestingly, not something she ever wore in the show, she does have 2 face prints, one with a half smirk, half smiling expression, and a shocked expression. I know this hair piece has been around for a while, even in this color, but it works very well for me for this figure. Altogether, this figure is pretty great and really captures a more modern Mary Jane. This figure was exclusive to this set, and all other red-headed Mary Jane figures before this one were from the Tobey Maguire movie-inspired sets. And honestly, meh. And there actually hasn't been a red-headed Mary Jane figure since, which is probably why she can go for so much money by herself. The last figure we have is Green Goblin. For anyone who hasn't watched the show, you may be confused by his appearance. Taking liberties with redesigns is something this show did quite often. I personally don't find it to be a bad thing. It's interesting and kind of mixes up what you'd expect, especially given how many different iterations of Spider-Man cartoons there are. This might also be a thing from the comics, but I haven't read too many to know any better. I think the Goblin's reimagining of the show was my favorite. It really worked to make him physically intimidating and have a presence. I think making him a big fig really captured that pretty well. He would not have worked as a regular minifigure. I mean, how could you make someone so imposing be just a regular figure? His scowl and silver printing for his armor are awesome, and I think he's a great figure overall. Much like Power Man, I think this figure fits pretty squarely into the From a Specific Show box in relation to the grander Spider-Man and Marvel universe, but I think being an exclusive, being a big fig, and just generally being a pretty cool looking figure, he does go for quite a bit new. So for the builds themselves, we have Goblin's glider and the spider helicopter. The glider is a pretty quick build and is a nice inclusion for the Green Goblin. It matches the show's glider pretty well. Because of the staggered stance of big figs, Goblin can have a bit of a weird time attaching to the glider. Both feet kind of hang off a little. The glider can shoot projectiles from either side. They are long Technic pins, so they don't fly super far or anything, but it's pretty fun. The glider and Goblin together are pretty large and heavier than a usual figure and accessory, so I'll have to do some interesting things to get to look like it's flying either on display or in the city. There are a few stickers on the glider. My stickers were okay in the box, but they're just kind of terrible. They don't stick great, and I think I've heard this can be a thing with clear stickers from years ago. But honestly, the stickers don't make or break these builds, in my opinion. If they fall off, it's not really a huge loss. The Spider Helicopter is the big build of the set, and I keep wanting to call it the Spidey Copter for some reason. The big Technic wheels for the side propellers on the sides really add to the size of the whole build, kind of giving it an even more substantial feel. I like how all the more mechanical parts are gray and black, while pretty much all of the body is themed red and blue. Sometimes the model has to use an existing color that doesn't match the rest of the area of the build in order to get the use of the function of that mismatched piece. The toe ball, or mixel joints, as some people call them, come to mind. The build is pretty fun, nothing too complicated for the intended age range, I think. And it's always interesting to see the changes in instructions from older sets versus today's. The stickers are the same, kind of awful, but alright if they fall off, which I assume at some point they will. One is a Spider logo and the other two are S.H.I.E.L.D. logos. In the show, Spider-Man basically works for S.H.I.E.L.D., so that's who provided the helicopter. Looking at the play features, first we have all the propellers, the top, the sides, and the tail. None of them move with any special triggering mechanisms besides a finger flick. The length and weight of the main propeller actually allows it to spin for quite a while, which is fun. On either side of the helicopter we have projectiles. The left side can shoot what I imagine to be web missiles, given their all-white coloring. There's a nice little side mechanism that can be pushed to fire all of them at once. They are the same Technic pins as the glider, so they don't go super far, but a little bit farther given they have a better mechanism to fire them. The other side can fire a net, or again, probably imagined as webbing. It flies okay. You kind of just ball it up and fit it inside the opening. This can cause obvious inconsistent loading, so your results will always be mixed. Sometimes it flies a little and lands around where you want. And other times it just poops out in the same mashed ball you made. You're not really ever gonna match what they put on the box, firing it straight out of the helicopter. According to Bricklink, this net has actually been used in 60 sets, but only 3 of those were white. The rest were black. The production of this net element also seems to have ended in 2022. Both of the cockpits can be opened to fit a minifigure in each. I think it's nice that both of the hero figures that come with the set have a place in the vehicle. Most often there's only space for one. I think the second cockpit fits with the size of the helicopter as well, adding to its size in a nice way without making it feel too large or like something that you couldn't play with. The rear cockpit has an ejection play feature that will drop the figure out of the bottom of the helicopter. The intent was for Spider-Man to be primed with a web connected to this jumper plate so he can hang from the helicopter. This does work pretty well, but I would say it's quite an abrupt and extreme way to remove a minifigure from a plate. I wouldn't really use your favorite minifigure there too often, as I would imagine the figure could get damaged from this feature over time. Now, LEGO Spider-Man does have a history of getting vehicles that he doesn't need and that have no relation to any other source material, and that's the case here with this helicopter. There was never a moment in the Ultimate Spider-Man show where he had a self-branded helicopter. He did have a motorcycle and a plane/spaceship at one point, however, but they didn't seem to make it into this theme. The other thing with this sub-theme is how a lot of the sets just didn't relate to anything that happened in the show. Like, a lot of the characters in the sets were in the show at one point or another, but the moment or event that they're depicting just never happened. Like this one. I'm fairly certain Green Goblin never interacted with Mary Jane at all, let alone kidnapped her. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, especially with something with an extensive history like Spider-Man and Marvel. And as I mentioned before, with Nova and Iron Fist, those characters in particular can kind of transcend and fit into any story you really want them to, just because of they look very classic and look pretty like they can fit into anything. In contrast, the new Guardian figures are all kind of stuck referencing the newest movie. Apart from them all having the exact same torso and legs, it does kind of limit the character. The figures will forever be references to that one specific movie. I do think between the two, I'm more partial to the sets that take inspiration from the Showa movie and do something a little different with it. Usually. I think for what it is, this is a pretty great set. I think it has some fun play features, some cool figures, and I think everything included works well together. I think the original price of $45 was a bit too high, but 2 new minifigures and 1 all-new Big Fig probably increased the price. I did really want the figures, and this was actually a cheaper way to get them all versus buying them individually. And I figured the build would be fun, and I don't think personally I've ever come across any sort of build that wasn't enjoyable for me in some way or another. It was also fun to forget how old I am for a little bit and play with it. I also knew my son would enjoy playing with it, and he did. This is the face of a kid who wants you to stop taking his picture so we can go back to playing. I'll probably keep this built for now and display it when I have somewhere to do that. And maybe some point I'll use the parts in the Lego City. There's some interesting things in here, so you never know. We'll see. Well, that's all I had for you today. So hopefully I'll be around more frequently. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.